So Oscar Valdez managed to make his first successful defense of his WBA World Featherweight Championship against Hiroshige Osawa with a seventh round technical knockout. Really solid job from Oscar Valdez. Hiroshige Osawa showed, why he was the number one contender. Basically, guy that was going to be Valdez's mandatory, managed to get him out of the way essentially, fairly early. Of course, he won this title as a vacant title over the guy that was the number two contender since Valdez was the number one, Matias Guerrero, who incidentally actually got a first round knockout on the same day, funny enough. So, showing that he wasn't any slouch either. But Valdez managed to go in there against Osawa, was landing some pretty good shots early on. Osawa was showing, a lot of chin, a lot of heart, a lot of just overall just toughness in there. Was attacking Valdez pretty relentlessly. Landed a couple good shots here and there, but overall just was outclassed in terms of just overall skill set. Valdez was a little bit too quick for him, a little bit too skilled for him. Was repeatedly landing, a number of power shots. But like I said, Osawa was just a tough, strong guy. He was coming forward, stalking forward, and he was giving Valdez a little bit of problems to the extent where Valdez started switching southpaw. I think it was in the third or the fourth round where he started to switch southpaw. He actually looked really good as a southpaw too. He showed that he could switch stances and box actually pretty well out of the southpaw stance, and with a little bit of a different style as opposed to when he fights orthodox. He actually seemed a little bit more of an elusive type of fighter, a little bit more of a pot shotter as a southpaw as opposed to the orthodox style where it's like he tends to, I think, set his feet a little bit more and try to really nail down big power shots in order to really do damage to a guy. Eventually, he did actually switch back orthodox and managed to land a clean, nasty left hook that rocked Osawa back, and basically was the beginning of the end where he managed to basically get him up against the ropes, hit him with a number of shots, and then eventually stop him basically on his feet. Of course, he had scored a knockdown before that. He scored a knockdown in round 4, but the stoppage actually came in round 7, where he managed to hit him with that clean left hook, knock him back to the ropes, get the ref to stop it because Valdez was just landing too many shots, too many unanswered punches, basically. And I mean, Valdez just did a solid job. Really solid job from Oscar Valdez. Definitely one of the fighters that's really emerged as kind of a breakout star, breakout, top level fighter over the last year, pretty much the last year, essentially. And a fighter I think that's going to be very interesting to watch going forward as well. Of course, he's had some really good performances recently. He had that big knockout versus Yevgeny Gradovich, big knockout, second round knockout over Matias Guerrero, this nice seventh round TKO. A bit of a knockout streak he's got going since September of 2015. So since then, he's been knocking everything out that he's been fighting against, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. I do know Miguel Mariaga, a former Nicholas Walters opponent, a guy that wobbled Nicholas Walters a couple of times, looms out there as one of the highest ranked contenders. Recently got a victory over Guy Robb on a top ranked card, so there's a possibility of him being out there. Of course, you got the likes of Jojo Diaz, of course, over on the Golden Boy side of the tracks. Jojo Diaz, I think, has been ready for a title shot for a minute now, and I wouldn't mind seeing the two of them face off. I think that'd be a great fight between those two. Top rank versus Golden Boy rivalry. Be an interesting fight to see them both get it done, and just an interesting clash of styles as well. Jojo Diaz is a bit of a southpaw, kind of a slickster type of southpaw, but a very fast kind of combination thrower. Whereas Valdez is a bit more of a mobile power puncher, like boxer puncher type of fighter. I think it's an interesting clash of styles, and two strong, young, in their prime fighters that would make for a matchup that we don't necessarily see all that often, for by and large nowadays. And I think it'd be just an excellent fight to see happen. I mean, outside of that, of course, the other champions, it would be always good to see Valdez get to fight those guys, albeit most of the other guys are pretty much under the PBC banner, essentially. Gary Russell, Carl Frampton, Jesus Cuellar, Abner Mars, Leo Santa Cruz, Lee Selby, pretty much all under the PBC banner. So with Valdez, he's kind of in a tough spot outside of Jojo Diaz and maybe like a Miguel Mariaga. There isn't necessarily the big name guys that are out there for him in order to really just get like a big money, big name type of a fight. Possibly even maybe have him fight like a Ronnie Rios as a lead up to a Jojo Diaz. And that's no disrespect to Ronnie Rios. I would favor Valdez in that fight, certainly. But Rios is another guy, another fighter from Golden Boy, who's done a pretty solid job. He has overall defeated most of the best guys that he's fought, but came up short against, who was that? I think it was Robinson Castellanos, if I remember correctly, that he wound up coming up short to, taking the loss to. But just Valdez has done a solid job so far. It'd be interesting to see how he does going forward. It is definitely tough to be in a division that's mostly dominated by a promotional entity that's kind of at odds with the one that you're under. So it'll be interesting to see just how they go about moving him in his career going forward. But I think the Valdez versus Jojo Diaz fight would be a very easy one to make. And I think that's one of the most compelling fights that could be made at featherweight, or just not even just at featherweight, but in almost any weight class. You got two guys that were kind of rivals on the come up. Guys that people had been kind of projecting would eventually face off against each other, and two guys that one of them is a champion, one of them is very much a top level contender. Arguably one of the best fighters in the weight class that doesn't have a title belt. And I think it's just a compelling fight. Two undefeated young prospects on the rise, and a great style matchup, and just a great test of skill and will against each other. And who knows, it's the type of fight that you could very easily see, make it for like a trilogy, like a Morales Barrera type of rivalry, where they fight once, maybe fight a bunch of other guys, come back, fight 2-3 years later, fight a bunch of other guys, and then come back, 2-3 years after that and fight a final time, something like that. Could definitely be that type of rivalry. It has the potential for it. But just as a matchup unto itself, I think is a solid matchup. But overall, that's just aside from the fact that Valdez, I think, is very much a top featherweight. I would favor him over just about everybody at the weight class. I think just his skill set and overall ability is very much at a top level. I think the primary guys that would beat him would be if he was to move up to 130. I think would be the main guys that would give him trouble, or in particular Jorge Lara, who of course kind of burst onto the scene this year with that nasty, vicious first-round knockout of Fernando Montiel. I think that's a guy that could be very, very dangerous for somebody like Valdez, because of just the kind of very kind of bum rush attacking, you better be ready to basically fight for your life type style that he brings. But overall, Valdez against just about anybody in the game, I think is very much a 50-50 solid level type of a fight, solid type of a chance in order to get the victory. So that's pretty much all I got to say about Valdez with the big win over Hiroshige Osawa, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.